Thanks for staying with us. In a new twist to the Moti Brothers case, police say their investigations have stalled because they can't get key witness statements from the siblings. Their father, businessman Nazim Moti, has allegedly interdicted police from interviewing the four boys or any family members. Let's speak to legal expert Ulrich Roux about these developments and possible implications. Thank you so much for your time, Ulrich. We do appreciate it on the Sunday evening. Speak to us about how possible it is for example, in a situation like this where minors were kidnapped, for a father to interdict the police from further investigating and getting statements.
Hi, good evening, Heidi. Thank you for having me. Yes, so from what I understand, there are two difficulties that the police are facing in this matter. The one is that the four brothers who were kidnapped have, since the kidnapping and since their release, moved to Dubai, so they are no longer in South Africa. And then, as you say, the second hurdle that the police are facing is that the father has obtained this interdict against the police, preventing them, I think, not as much from investigating the matter, but from making contact with his children and from probing them for information pertaining to the matter. So the only way in which such an application for an interdict would have been successful is if he could prove on behalf of his sons to the High Court of South Africa that the police investigation was either completely flawed in that they have no evidence to proceed with the matter, one, or two, that they are infringing on the children's privacy and right to privacy, and that, their probing the children effectively amounted to some sort of harassment from the police. I've not seen that order. I've only read the articles saying that there is such an order that has been obtained. But yes, until I see that order and the grounds on which that interdict was granted, those are the only two grounds that I can say a High Court would take into consideration when granting such an interdict.
Certainly, and I think just covering, eNCA having covered this story, we do know that police were not really involved, allegedly, when it came to the release of the boys. But I want to speak about on the side of the law and how much grounds the family actually has, especially because you are dealing with minors. We do know when the boys were found, there was some sort of assessment done to make sure the boys were fine. But soon after that, in fact, in the early hours of that morning, the interdict was handed over to say no police or nobody is allowed to question those boys. In terms of it being a case of minors, are they on the right side of the law?
Yes, certainly, and that could have been one of the reasons why the interdict was granted as well, is obviously to protect these minors. It is unfortunate that in South Africa, the kidnapping numbers have escalated tremendously over the last year or two. And there were numerous rumors doing the rounds in this matter as well, that there was a ransom paid in the amount of 50 million rand to release the children. They were unharmed during the entire ordeal. They were kidnapped for a period of 3 weeks. But of course, the safety of the minors would be front and center in such an application. And the High Court would have been convinced, as I said, that either the police investigation was completely flawed, secondly, that there's no reason for them to investigate the matter, and thirdly, that these minors' constitutional right to privacy was being infringed upon by the police in their investigation. Interestingly, though, I have read that the interdict was obtained on an ex parte basis. And what that means is that the party who is at the receiving end of the interdict, in this instance the police, they have been interdicted from making contact with the children. They are not given notice of the application. So in other words, they are not even informed that the application is being brought. They merely receive the order interdicting them from further investigating the matter or further making contact with the children. Normally, in an ex parte application for an interdict, the interdict is granted in the form of an interim interdict, and then a return date is set at a later stage. And on that return date, the police would be able to try and convince the High Court of South Africa why the interdict should not be made a final interdict and why they should be allowed to further investigate the matter. One can only surmise as well that there must have been evidence adduced to the court on this in this ex parte application that the police had, in some other way, negatively influenced the release of the children, or been involved in some sort of scenario that compromised the release of the children. Unfortunately, that is speculation at this stage until we've seen the full set of papers on which the interdict was granted.
I think we're all trying to get our hands on those papers, Ulrich, just to try and understand what exactly that application entails. I just want to ask a final question with regards to whether or not the family can withdraw this application and whether or not they will then be obliged to comply. And the reason I ask this is because Police Minister Bekele said that for now it's not an obstruction to justice, it's just them not partaking and trying to figure out exactly what happened. But in terms of them withdrawing this case, which many say is highly unlikely because we've also heard that they've now fled the country, would the family consider this, or is it just a situation of, well, this is the application and we would just rather not have anybody bother us?
Yes, so they're free and within their full rights to at any stage withdraw the application and have the order set aside, after which the police will then obviously continue with their investigation as to who kidnapped them and who's responsible for this. But I think the chances of that are quite slim, as you point out. The difficulty that the police also faces is that in any criminal matter, there must be a complainant. In other words, there must be someone who's driving as a criminal complaint and someone who has laid such a complaint, in other words, deposed to an affidavit under oath, and the remainder of the investigation then follows from that. And now from what it seems is that none of these children have even deposed to an affidavit under oath. So the police's hands are pretty much tied. They at this stage would not be able to call any witnesses, it seems, if they even knew who the perpetrators were. So certainly a long and an uphill battle for the police should they want to try and investigate this matter further. It certainly seems as if it won't go much further at this stage, especially given that the 4 minors are no longer in South Africa and now find themselves in Dubai, and also obviously the interdict. So an uphill battle for the police, most definitely.
Yeah, certainly. I think everybody just wants to know what's in that application and why the family decided to up and leave, because I think we were also invested in this matter and just wanting the safe return of the boys and also knowing who's behind all of this. But thank you so much for your insights. We do appreciate it. That's legal expert Ulrich Roux.